In honor of Denver's decriminalization of magic mushrooms, doctors of Reddit, what if any, is your best story of patients on hallucinogenics? I'm not a doctor, but I was working as a paramedic at a music festival when we got called to a kid tripping on who knows what. The guy had climbed to the top of a portable generator stadium light. So he's 20 feet in the air, on a light pole staring into this blazing midnight sun screaming, "I'm a moth, go into the flame." We had several cops, firefighters and myself standing at the base for 30 minutes discussing how to get him down without killing him or us. The entire time a crowd of people on drugs is surrounding us to see how it all plays out. Do we get a ladder truck and try to coax him down? What if he won't go? Do we spray mace up there? What if he falls? All of a sudden this greasy looking janitor walks up, turns off power to the generator, turns on his flashlight and aims it at the Mothman. Dude looks at the flashlight on the ground, scambles down and follows it to the medical rent like a puppy about to get a snack. I'm embarrassed that none of us thought about that. I was a doctor that was on rotation in the emergency department. 33-year-old male who was brought in naked by the police, under the influence of suspected mushroom ingestion. He had a bit of trouble understanding why he'd been arrested, despite being very aware of the fact that he'd been caught gallivanting around naked in the rain in a children's playground. The initial police response had been with 2 officers, and he told me with glee that they weren't able to grab him because he was slippery like an oiled pig in the rain, and the nakedness didn't help with no clothing for them to grab. Due to being unable to catch him, they called for dog squad backup. He recounted with a shit-eating grin how he'd hidden inside a giant puddle like Rambo and had thrown sticks and rocks to confuse the police dog. Following an hour or so, they gave up and reverted to using a search line of 12 police slowly advancing to find him. Eventually one stumbled into this goblin's little swamp puddle, and then they took another 15 minutes trying to catch him as he bolted naked around the children's playground, again. His only regret, despite his wife refusing to come and pick him up from the hospital, was that he hadn't eaten mushrooms. Edit, I'm glad this story is brightening a few days. Thank you for the silvers and golds. To his fans, I'm sure he's somewhere out there to this very day, naked, slippery, and plotting his revenge. I had a patient who had taken an ungodly amount of benadryl in a failed suicide attempt. A lot of people think that since it makes you drowsy, a bunch of it might be able to kill them in their sleep. Instead of killing them though, benadryl basically gives you absolutely terrifying hallucinations for like 24 hours or more and then leaves you with the worst multi-day hangover you have ever had in your life. He would not stop yelling and screaming about that damn cat poking its head out of the ceiling tiles every single time I left the room. He also had short bursts of thinking he was covered in bugs and I would find him stripped naked and yelling into the wall. I had a guy who was freaking out thinking he was going to die because he thought he had eaten too many hallucinogenic mushrooms. He went online and saw that sometimes patients are given activated charcoal to soak up the mushrooms in the stomach. Not entirely true BTW. So he goes outside and starts chowing down on charcoal briquettes that he has in his garage for grilling. After about a dozen he realizes, holy shit, I'm eating charcoal briquettes. Now he is really freaking out, so he grabs his dog, as the thinks he is never coming back to his house, and drives himself to the ED. He parks out front, walks into triage with the pup, black charcoal all over his face and hands, and says, I need a doctor and someone to watch my dog when I die. Was working night shift on inpatient service. ED called to admit someone. We've got a 17-year-old down here with altered mental status. We think he needs to be admitted for eval monitoring. VSS, chem fine, etc etc. Now, I'm not a pediatrician. I don't do kids. I don't understand why the ED is calling me. But I'm an intern and it's 2 in the morning, so arguing about it is stupid. I headed to the ED. I get there to see a young dude sitting there with his parents. I'll mention that his dad was a full bird colonel and very much fit the archetype, and his mom seemed to fit that type of personality, too. The kid is literally rolling around in his bed, alternating between crying, asking if he was going to die, rubbing his dad's hand, and telling him how much he loved him. I had to sit there and take a history with a straight face from a 17-year-old who kept being distracted by just how much he loved his dad. I think my first question was, "Did you take anything tonight?" And he was straight up and said, "Oh, yeah, like a shit ton of acid. Want any?" I 100% laughed at this statement. His dad was not amused. The patient was discharged the next morning. I once ate 7 grams of mushrooms. It was all fun until I got struck by lightning and was electrocuted. Turns out that my phone was on vibrate. I went to Bonnaroo a few years back and I had vendor and media wristbands so I could skip pretty much every line. As I was walking to a vendor entrance, I see this spun out dude being questioned by security on horseback. When they get down to get closer, detain him for medical evaluation. In a stroke of drugged up genius and panic, he slapped both horses on the ass and took off running in the opposite direction, cackling like a witch. Security just stood there looking at the horses, then at him, not knowing what to chase first. They eventually opted to go for the horses running through tents because obviously that's a potential issue. A few hours later, I'm walking to grab lunch and I see a dude with a mullet and a trant gun driving a camouflaged ATV in a panicked state. Since my vendor gig required me to have a radio, I start flipping through channels until I get a conversation about the horse. Basically, ATV guy was pissed that they couldn't find a horse at a festival. Kept saying shit, "Alright, I'll check there again, but I just don't get how you lose a horse. Favorite morning afternoon that weekend by far." Edit. I forgot another funny part of this. My friend was working a falafel stand, which is where I'd go for lunch since she'd trade me food for weed, and when I got there I asked her if she heard about the horse. She suddenly looks horrified and goes, "Wait, there's actually a horse on the loose?" I thought that guy was just really fucked up. She met Mullet Man and he was frantically asking her about a horse. She legit thought he stole a work ATV and was asking people about a horse because he was fucked up. I'm an anesthetist. During a C-section, the epidural seemed to not fully be working and the patient was feeling pain, so we were forced to give ketamine. Ketamine has many effects and one of which is profound pain blocking, analgesia. It's safe to use in this case because it won't stop the baby from breathing like morphine or fentanyl would. Ketamine also causes hallucinations, like severe hallucinations. Patient stopped screaming from pain and began screaming from the dragons. Oh shit. Oh shit. Get them away while being totally pain-free and comfortable. It was not in a terrified way but more of an excited I can't believe it kind of way. When the baby came out and began crying, it turned to "What in the fuck is that?" Oh my god, that lasted a solid 20 minutes. Edit. Thanks for the gold. First gold coin ever. Doc as well. Used to work with cerebral palsy kids that were given ketamine prior to botox injections in their extremities. There was a giant cabinet filled with stuffed animals and toys that they were allowed to pick from once they had mostly recovered. One little 6-year-old, who was still having some mild effects from the ketamine, opened the cabinet and saw the stuffed animals. She got a huge smile and said, "Oh, they're alive. They're all waving at me." She proceeded to dive into a pile of stuffed animals and have a very animated conversation with the living stuffed animals. It was adorable. I am a doctor. Saw a guy carve out his own rectum, anus, because he was hallucinating there was a microchip inserted there. Not repairable. Now he poops through an ostomy bag. Subscribe for more stories like this. I am waiting. My friend is Kung Fu Panda. Just saying. I guess it is too late. She is near your doors.